And we are live. Not really. We're recording though. So it'll be live eventually.
Excellent.
So, welcome, Mr. Weening.
Thank you, sir.
So how we just jumped right in there with your finger to the screen with you saying allow, allow, allow.
Great. You're not doing any editing on this? Is that what I'm
I
this what I
you know
detect?
you know what I'm doing? Totally straight stream, authentic, no editing, insanity,
Okay.
reality. I and it's intentional though because I when I look out in the landscape right now, I just I want to give I think authenticity is a cool thing to offer. And also it allows me to be fairly lazy with how I produce things.
Killing two birds with one stone.
So it's ideal. But yeah, thank you for taking the time today. It's been a while since we've chatted. I think we had a coffee together like 3 years ago, right?
I think it was longer than 3 years ago
Wow,
because
COVID. You're absolutely correct.
I think it was before COVID, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah, it
wasn't it
had to
like
be.
2019
Yeah,
or it may
it
have been
had to
just
be.
before?
Yeah.
Like, that's 5 years ago. So, for the elderly guys like us who aren't one of the young guys anymore, that's our life now.
Well, you're 42?
43.
Oh wow. Oh, never mind. You're not as young as I am then at 42.
You're just a pup, Rudy.
Yeah, I know. So since the last time I talked to you, you're working with the Maple View Group out of Barrie last time, and now you've evolved into like a whole bunch of different things.
Yes.
So I was wondering, can you give your I'd love to present your spiel. How does a man evolve into what you're becoming?
Well, the answer is a little bit at a time. I think that's the short answer is you just do a little bit at a time and keep adding to it. So yeah, I we live in Saskatchewan now. So we moved from Barrie, Ontario. Well, we'll get into this more. Right now, what I'm doing, I have a website called heydads.ca, and my goal is to encourage men to be intentional in our most important organization. And our most important organization is not our businesses or our companies or our ministries,
What?
but it is it. Gentlemen, pay attention.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to end this podcast.
Yeah, deleted. So lots of us naturally lean towards effort and intentionality in our companies and setting goals and hitting deadlines and doing projects. At home, not so much. Some of us are, but if you're like me, you've got to really work to be present at home. Even yesterday, Rudy, I'm sitting at the table and my wife is like, "Hey, hello, like, are you with us? Are you here? Are you here?" And I'm just looking off into space, thinking about some project or something going on. So really, as men, we've got to. My heart is really to encourage men to be intentional in our homes, with our families, with our wives, with our children, because we live in a culture that is pushing against that. In my humble opinion.
I don't. I think your humble opinion is you can be confident in it. We're absolutely we live in North American culture. Yeah, we are brought up being told that being an entrepreneur is a heroic pastime, and that if you're successful, it's you can gauge somebody's morality based on their success in business, which we
Mm.
know is was false. So how are you finally are you speaking are you getting out in the public, are you speaking to mostly churches, or where do you find your voice is being welcomed right now?
Yeah, so I'm doing a few things. Definitely a lot in the homeschooling men's ministry kind of spectrum for sure. I've written a couple books as well. I've written a fiction book for kids, like an 8 to 12-year-old kind of fantasy fiction book. And it is about family and dads and sons having adventures and solving mysteries and riding dinosaurs. So I have a bunch of 8 to 12-year-old boys and they like dinosaurs. So I was like Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Hardy Boys. I tried to funnel all that into my fiction book for kids called Danger in the Jungle. And I just released a book, a nonfiction book about it's funny stories about our family, stories of injury and adventure from the front lines of dadhood. It is called
Incredible.
Yes, Dear, I'm Watching Them. How many of us as dads have not actually been watching them? But when our wife asks, Are we watching the kids? Yes, dear, I'm watching them while they hammer nails into their hands and put bike ramps over the garage,
Yeah, of course.
etc. Yes, dear, I'm watching them. So, so yeah, doing a lot of. I've done a few homeschooling conferences. I'm going to be in Ontario in May, speaking at the homeschooling conference there. Some men's ministry type events, conferences, and breakfasts, stuff like that. I plugged into the Toastmasters circuit a little bit. So if
Mhm.
anyone's familiar with Toastmasters, it's a public speaking course. I'm actually going to be speaking in Regina on Thursday to a Toastmasters group there. So, and try to do podcasts, radio stuff as much as I can, just reaching out wherever I can get some traction. I have my own podcast called Helping Men Thrive, and kind of
Amazing.
work-life balance is the theme, if we want to use that term. I think there's more involved than work-life balance. I think our lives are integrated and holistic, but that would be the term that describes kind of our main punch, what we're trying to do.
So it sounds like you're often like speaking to most dads who are looking to improve and aware of the areas that they need to improve in. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it would be accurate. And I've done a couple of talks around pornography, around technology, and that resonates with dads and it resonates with moms. Rudy, the average age of boys, they say boys are seeing pornography as young as 7 now.
Mm-hmm.
My friend says we're giving our 7-year-olds a strip club and they're carrying around in their pocket. When you
Yeah.
give your kid a phone, you don't. This is a whole topic. I don't know if you've heard of the book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt.
No.
He's a researcher, university professor, I
Yeah,
believe, in New
I'm
York
familiar with
City.
him, but not the book.
Yeah, so the premise of his book is that we between 2010 and 2015 we went from a play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood. And I think you put up a post the other day like we're the last generation to grow up without the digital age or something
Yeah, you
like
got
that.
it.
And it's true. So Jonathan Haidt says that between 2010 and 2015, we went from a play-based childhood with many of our children to a phone-based childhood, and it has been an unmitigated disaster, frankly. And we live in neighborhoods now where parents don't want their kid to go down the street and play at the park because there's a concern of kidnapping, or I don't know what the concern is, because statistically, all those sort of statistics have plummeted, and we live in a much safer society than we
Mm-hmm.
used to. But we'll hand our kids a iPhone with infinite access to adult world, anything and everything all over the world online
With
without
no
any kind of
restrictions currently.
parameters, no conversations, even no restrictions. And it's a backwards twist on what has happened. So that's been a topic that I've really dug into on the pornography and technology side.
That's incredible. I think pornography has to be we have to take the taboo away from the conversation. It has to be completely opened up, especially as us, both of us, fathers of young men coming up as well. I can tell you that I'm striving to make it a topic that has no taboo in our home, that it's openly discussed about the issues of it. But even more so, I think it's important for young men specifically to be educated on the effects of pornography as it acts almost like a drug on your neurological system. That we don't understand. Like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm like a second class renaissance man with a library of stuff that I try to comprehend. But I can tell you that if neurologically, if we have a partner that gives us an orgasm as a male, there are neurological ties to that individual because of that single interaction. And so, as we habitually go through experiencing sex with our phones, what these young men don't realize it is they are neurologically wiring themselves to basically mate with their phones. And the amount, just like they're not aware of this, they're not aware that they're programmable. They're not aware that their habits will lead to a future of loneliness and sexual dysfunction. And I love what you're doing. Actually, I love that the conversation went in this direction right away, because uh, I love this whole talking to other fathers and exploring how can we be better dads. Often the issue is with men, I'm finding, isn't having to like add good habits, but it's to actually have honest discussions as men about what's keeping us from being good men.
Mm.
And you often find our brokenness, which is expressed in pornography and addiction and emotional dysfunction. So I think you're it's incredible. It's You're helping save the world.
Yeah. You know what it comes down to, I think, Rudy, not I think, but it definitely comes down to open conversations, like you said. And you touched on, building bonds with your wife or building bonds with your phone. Like there's a term now called pornography induced erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
Porn induced erectile dysfunction. Now, is it medical or is it psychological? I think there's still research going into it. But it is along that lines that young men are being trained sexually to respond to their phone, and not only responding to it, but looking for increased intensity, dark, violent, like because the same thrill doesn't happen. So it's going down a dark road. But versus, and then when they are with their actual wife or a actual woman, they just can't perform because they've trained their body and their mind to
Yeah,
respond to
you were
what they see
talking
on their
about
phone.
the pathway of porn, how it's not these young men or women, whoever's using porn, they don't understand that that progression, that you always needed the next level stimulus. You need the novelty to drive your excitement. And so they start with Sears magazines in the underwear section, and they end up with some a terrible deviation of that that's completely unnatural a few years later. It's actually interesting. Serial killers, male serial killers. I'm going to use broad strokes here because I don't have the research in front of me, but I can tell you that most serial killers in our day and age will express a profound pornography addiction, and how it contributed directly to where they were in life, because it's
Mm,
after you get into these dark niche fantasies of porn, uh, acting out on them is a natural tendency, right? You are what you eat. You exercise what you research. From the overflow of your heart, your words come forth, right?
mm-hmm,
How much worse is it if the overflow of your heart is filled with sexual deviation?
mm-hmm. And it's like you mentioned the Sears magazine, and you're dating yourself and you're dating us because yeah, there's no Sears and there's no magazines, and that's the thing. So in the research, the three A's are accessibility, autonomy, and affordability. Those are the three. Accessible, so you don't have to sneak into a convenience store with a paper bag and get a magazine at night. It's accessible in your pocket on your phone right now. In 2 seconds, you and I can have pornography. So it's accessible. It is autonomous. It can be, no one knows. Sure, the internet always knows, but no one knows. You can have it on your phone. It's just it's anonymous. You're watching, you're observing. So it's accessible, it's anonymous, and it's affordable. You don't there's so much free availability of this. And it is, I use the word predatory. Like you are scrolling, our children are scrolling. I tell the story of my 10-year-old son. We have a family iPad that is in the kitchen, and the kids listen to Spotify on it. I'm too cheap to pay for a Spotify subscription, so we have the free one. And stuff comes up, albums come up, and some album comes up with a half-naked woman on it. And my 10-year-old son, he goes immediately to my wife. He says, "Hey, Mom, I just saw something on the Spotify playlist, that wasn't good. I just want to tell you about it." And I tell that story because it's that communication, um, not making it taboo, like you said, Rudy. Like we just need to have these open conversations. Some people use the phrase like we need to make pornography or we need to make sex normal. And like we just need to have these conversations with our kids. I can think of two conversations I had with my parents growing up. I had great parents, But we had two conversations, and it's not about the birds and the bees conversation. It is multiple talks over time. There's actually a book by Barrett Johnson called The Talks, and he says this is not one talk. This is many talks over many years as you're driving, as things are coming up, as your kids are seeing things, as your kids see the Spotify album covers, as your kids are looking at their friend's phone and think. This is talks over many years, many topics, many subjects between you and your children. Get the communication happening.
Well, you can't just you don't just start here. Like there's hopefully we could tell parents, anybody listening to this in posterity's sake, this is you get to have these conversations as the fruit of healthy relationships with your children.
Yeah.
These are deep trust topics that if you're not speaking to if you can't have normal conversations with your child about normal day-to-day things that's happening in their lives, I would maybe suggest lightly that you shouldn't talk about these topics just yet. At the same time, though, I can tell you a funny story. I was in one of those homes too. We were both brought up in like Dutch immigrant homes, so some similar vibes. And I remember, just as like an example, I give my father credit. He's a good, very good man, and his heart's in the right spot. But he no talk about anything sexual my whole life, right? I was 16 years old and we're driving. And I just remember out of the blue, we're driving, he's in the driver's seat. He just turns to me out of the blue. It goes like this. So do you masturbate?
Well, that's funny you should ask.
Yeah, so I can appreciate the level of depth of relationship, and like I don't know, man, it's tough though. Uh, I guess you just work on it as a parent, but what do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I agree that it's tough. So my oldest son is 13. I think your boys are older, right? What are your boys like
My
16 or
oldest is Adele will be 16, my daughter, and then Max is 15, and Grayson will be 13. Yeah.
okay, all right. So yeah, we're in a similar time frame. Anyways, about a year or so ago, my 12-year-old, he was 12 at the time. He's like, Dad, what is I heard someone say the F word and I know it's a bad word. What does the F word mean? And I'm like, great. I'm glad you're asking me. That's a great question. He asked me 3 times. One time we were with the small kids. I'm like, I can't talk about that right now. We'll talk later. Another time, I think we were driving with the whole family and he asked, like, we'll talk about it later. Anyways, am I putting it off because I don't want to go there? And even I'm like, okay, let's go for a walk. So we go for a walk and I'm like, hey, the F word. I said, well, do you know what sex is? And he says, yeah, isn't that if you're a boy or a girl? I'm like, absolutely. It's if you're a boy or a girl. I'm glad that was your answer. Anyways, and I explained it to him, but I was nervous, going on that walk. And it's funny you said your dad was driving with you side by side. I think men and boys conversate, have better conversations and communicate easier side by side, going for a walk, working on the car in the garage, chopping wood, riding their BMX bikes, whatever, side by side, going for a walk in the woods. Men, I think, have better communication side by side, and women sometimes have better communication face to face. And sometimes guys face to face, it can get a little bit awkward sometimes. But so walking with, you were talking about driving with your dad, walking with my boy. I was still nervous to have the conversation, but I jumped in and we just had it, and I explained it all to him. And we've had multiple conversations since then. Things come up. Reading Proverbs, go ahead and read Proverbs with your boys, and you're going to learn about the seductress. You're going to learn about all this stuff. The Bible has got all these topics in it. My other son was reading Leviticus or Deuteronomy, Old Testament laws, and there's all kinds of questions and terms in there that he was reading and asking me about. And so I had the conversation with him because he was reading the Old Testament laws in Leviticus, and I think his question was, what is semen or something like that? And
Yeah.
it gets on something.
Yeah.
And so like, all right, son, if you're old enough to ask the questions, I think you're old enough to hear an answer. So it's different with every kid, but jump in, feel nervous, feel your hands sweat, feel like you don't know what you're going to say. That's okay. You'll figure it out.
Now, what's your thoughts? Because you've been like intentionally investigating this and like putting your head into space for a little bit a little bit of time now. What's the best advice you could give on like giving your kid access to the internet at home? Like, so for me, like I'm really wrestling with this. I'm technically savvy. I know my kids are fairly technically savvy. I'm not confident that I could set up the proper walls to keep them out of the internet, frankly. Like, honestly, I'm not. And then, even if I do at home, all they have to do is step outside the walls and they have access to screens everywhere. Like, what are your thoughts on training our children on how to on how to, because at this point too, I've realized I cannot control the flow of the internet. I just have to have open conversation. But do you believe in like limiting access or controlling? What's your thoughts?
Yes, I believe in limiting access. Yes, I believe in controlling. I interviewed a guy on our podcast, and we were actually talking about finance, but he had a great line. He's like, with our children, we move from control to influence. So as our kids are getting older, when they're young, we're controlling them. Like, we're literally holding their arm. Don't run on the road, and I will hold your arm to prevent you from running on the road. Not because I'm a crazy controlling dad, because I love you and I want what's best for you. So I'm going to keep you from running out on the road. But when they're 16, we don't have to tell them don't run on the road anymore. Like, we can influence them. Now you're driving, be safe. We can move from control to influence. And so that is the trajectory. So I am big on early control and later influence. And we are extreme. We're weird. I'm going to tell you that. My oldest daughter left home. She was almost 18. We gave her a flip phone. I gave her a flip phone. This is like 2 years ago. And I said, you can, whatever, I trust you. You can do whatever you want from this point, but I'm not going to buy you a smartphone or give you a smartphone. I gave her the flip phone. She went and bought her own iPhone a couple months later. And I was fine with that. She was almost 18 at the point, and she can make her own decisions. But people were like, wow, you gave your kids, your teenage daughters didn't have cell phones. Yeah, no, they didn't. But you know what they do have? They have guitars, they have pianos, they have acreage to run around on, they have bicycles. They're built, they are artists, they are doing things that are building tactile skills, and they're not sitting in front of screens. And I will fight for that, any single day. I'd much rather have my kids playing guitar than playing Minecraft,
And
or scrolling the internet.
do your kids have any exposure to anything digital, any video
Yeah, yeah.
games?
So we don't have a TV, but we have a family iPad. We have laptop. We watch Dude Perfect and Mark Rober, and we watch YouTube videos and stuff. So there's definitely, I would call it family access. We are watching it together. We're pretty diligent to keep an eye on what they are watching. To go back to what Jonathan Haidt has said, there's a movement. I think it's like wait until eighth is the title. Like, wait until eighth grade before giving your kid a phone, and wait until 16 before giving them access to social media. Those are two kind of parameters that I have seen brought up in some of the research.
Mm-hmm.
And giving them a non-internet accessed phone, a dumb phone or a wise phone. I've heard people calling them wise phones. It's a
Yeah.
text and call phone to communicate with mom and dad. It's your family. You're the parents. What works in my home may not work in your home. We homeschool our kids too, so that's a whole different aspect. I was talking to a parent a couple weeks ago, and their son is in public school, 12 years old. He's the only kid in his class who doesn't have a cell phone. So the boys just want to get together to play basketball after school, and he doesn't get the text. And it's not because the other boys don't like him. It's just because he doesn't have a phone.
Yeah.
So now he's left out, not because they don't like him, but just because they're not phoning him to say, hey, we're going to play basketball after school. That is not happening. So I acknowledge, hey, that's hard. Life can be hard. That's difficult. But I would encourage parents, stand strong, because going down that path can move rapidly, and it can get bad really quick. And that's where the communication aspect happens. Constantly talking about this. Why are we doing this? What's our mindset behind this? We think it's best for you. We love you. Those are some of my thoughts on that.
It's kind of shifting in between extremes though too, right? Like the all or nothing. Do you think there's like I think as we progress more and more down the digital route, right? And everything becomes digitized. And I do mean everything. Like the onset of I hate to use the coin phrase, but AI, right? Uh, our grandkids will assume that the lamp on their desk can talk to them. And that's not facetious. Like we may get a complaint from our grandkids one day is like, Dad, the lamp is giving me attitude, right? Because it's not, it is. So like I think there's a balance of the maybe a balance, but or do you think you're better off an all or nothing attitude? Do you think there could be a balance in there? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a balance. So my 11-year-old son, he loves coding. So he does coding and Scratch, and he's building games and stuff like that. And I'm fine with that. I have him helping do some video editing or helping me with my website stuff, just a little bit of things. So I think I would frame it as, coaching your kids through this and not just releasing them into unfettered access into the wild west of the internet,
Yeah.
and being involved in it with them and involving them in your life, whether that means, taking them to you go to a city council meeting. I've taken my 10-year-old son to city council meeting with me, getting them involved in an adult world. Because ultimately, I didn't think of this, but someone said, we're not trying to raise good kids. We're trying to raise good adults. And we're trying to prepare our kids to be great parents and great husbands and great wives someday and contributing members of society. And so the long game is that we're trying to create great adults with our children. So I think access with coaching, I keep saying coaching, but with an adult around and interactive with parents, that's kind of my perspective on that one.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. And if I may, you're raising quite a few good adults potentially. So we didn't hit that. I haven't hit yet one of your most popular points of your 10 children. One for every
Yes,
finger of the hand.
yes.
So
Approximately 10. So yes,
so that's got to be a popular topic when you go around speaking to people, right?
it is. People are always curious. What is life like with 10 kids?
I know I am. My very I do have some questions if that's okay. Like
Absolutely.
my first is how do you make sure that you have a good relationship with 10 children?
I get that question very often, I would
Yeah,
say. And I kind of have alluded to it. And it is, I just read a book called Family Revision by Jeremy Pryor. And the whole concept of the book is integrated family. So that means when I'm working on my website, I'm asking my 11-year-old son to help me out. And can you upload this picture on here? I'm going to a conference next week. Can you come with me? I'm going to have my three of my kids with me working at the booth, selling books, doing stuff
incredible.
like that. When I am going to Toastmasters tonight, an adult business club, I every week pretty much I have a kid with me. From
Amazing.
the youngest is a 6-year-old that came with me, and I won't do that again. But when he gets a little bit older, he can come back. But my 8-year-old twins, they were with me last week. So it is about integrating family into your life. That's what I really think it's about. So that it is not just work over here outside of my family and then family over here outside of my work. It is involving our kids. On Sunday, we played on the band at church. There were 6 of us: me, Florence, Sterling, Violet, Justice, Emerald. So we had a singer, bass player, guitar player, piano player, acoustic guitar player. I was playing drums. So we're doing hobbies together. I've done some Tough Mudder events. These are like a 10-mile obstacle course mud race. My 3 oldest
Incredible.
girls have all done that with me. And Rudy, I said this to someone the other day, when your older kids are enjoying hobbies that you enjoy, it is a whole other level of parenting. And I think the teenage years are the best years. People say, oh, the teenage years, rebellious years. No, I don't buy that. And I've got 10 kids. I've got 4 teenagers now. So we may have some bad apples in the bunch. I pray not, but we're not perfect parents and they're not perfect kids. But when your kids are old and you are leveraging your fun stuff and doing it with your kids, it just takes life to a whole other level. So integrating your kids into your life, into your work, into your hobbies, that's how you get time with them all.
So like you and your wife, I assume, yeah, an intentional decision to keep having children. What core in you leads that, or what love in you led you to that decision? Because like I can tell you that like I actually had a conscious point where I decided to stop having children.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I sit here talking to a man like you, I honestly I question it right away
Mm.
because I wonder about your philosophy.
So we did not start out wanting to have 10 kids. I'm one of four. My wife is one of three. We are just normal, regular Canadian people. We are not Amish or Mennonite or Jewish or Catholic or anything. We're just regular people. Anyways, we were going to have four kids, Rudy, and we began looking into homeschooling. So can't remember the age, but our oldest was getting to be 4 or 5 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And we looked at the public school system. We didn't love that at all. We talked about private school. I grew up, I was homeschooled. I went to a small private school. I went to a big private school, and I went to a public high school. So I kind of saw the gamut. I saw the spectrum. So we began to talk to other families that were homeschooling, and stereotypically, I think you could say homeschooling families are bigger than the general population. I was at a homeschooling conference in Winnipeg a couple weeks ago. The
I bet
first
it's
three
not
people,
stereotypical. I bet it's statistical. I bet it's
it
the
is,
fact.
it is. So at this homeschool conference, the first three people I met, one had 11 kids, one had 13 kids, and one had 14 kids. And I said to them, you know what? I'm not usually the guy in the room that has the least amount of kids, but I did. So we started hanging around some of these bigger families and asking questions and reading books. And there's a book, and I believe it's called Be Fruitful and Multiply by Nancy Campbell. And she talked in this book about Jeremiah. So Jeremiah 29:11. Not to put you on the spot, but do you know what Jeremiah 29:11 says?
No.
It says, we hear this in church all the time. I know the plans I have for you, plans to
Oh,
prosper you,
yes, I do know it.
plans not to harm you. As soon as I say it, you recognize it,
Yeah.
right? Well, we hear that verse all the time in Christian circles. What we don't hear are the verses in that chapter in January 29, not in Jeremiah 29. Previous to that, Israel is heading into captivity, into Babylon, I believe. And God says to them, as they're going, their whole nation is in captivity. He says, build houses, plant gardens, have families, give your daughters in marriage, give your sons in marriage. Do all these things so that you may be fruitful and multiply and increase and not diminish. And I was reading that verse, and I believe the Holy Spirit just brought it to life for me. And the thought crossed my mind, we live in like the cushiest time in all of history. We don't have to get water from the well. We don't have to go out to the outhouse. We don't have to process our own meat, although some of us do that just because we want to. But we live in such a cushy time and culture. And it seemed like the Lord was leading us to say, hey, why would we not follow that same instruction to plant gardens and build homes and have children and give our children in marriage? And it just came alive to me. And we made a decision, Rudy, to just say, okay, God, we're going to leave this in your hands and trust you, and no regrets. No regrets. We love it. I said to my 6-year-old last night, I was putting him to bed, and I said to him, imagine if we had just had 7 kids. He's number 8. I'm like, if we had just had 7, his name's Arrow. Arrow, I wouldn't be tucking you in tonight. We wouldn't be having these good times together. And this is amazing. I love you. I'm so glad God gave you to us, son. But if we'd stopped at 7, we wouldn't have had Arrow. And so it was just
And
it
you're
just
saying
occurred
this
to
to
me.
him.
I'm
You say,
saying this to
you
him
better be grateful that you're alive.
because you almost weren't. So, but really, it's not all lollipops. We have cups spill at every meal, and we have my 17-year-old daughter did the illustrations in my book. So if you want to have some tense moments doing a project together with your teenage daughter, put a book together with her, and that will create some moments of growth for both of you.
And
So
it has to be expensive too.
it is it expensive? Yeah, it's more expensive than most families.
Yeah.
I alluded to this before, but we don't have an Amazon. We don't have Amazon Prime. We don't have TV subscriptions. We don't own a TV. We don't have Spotify subscriptions. So we live a pretty cheap lifestyle. We drive one vehicle. I
Yeah.
know that's not possible for everyone, but we have we can talk about finances because I had dug ourselves into a large debt hole early in our marriage, and we worked very hard to climb out of that hole of
Oh,
my own
please.
building.
I'm here for the story. Hopefully you want to share it.
Sure. So I was working in a commission sales job. Rudy, I think you are a pretty good salesman. You seem to be pretty business savvy and buying and selling and starting companies. I'm not sure I have that same ability. So, anyways, I was in a sales position and commission based, and you think, hey, the next month is going to get better. So, you have a bad month, put some stuff on the credit card. Well, you can only have so many of those bad months before you run out of credit cards or you run out of credit. I started paying our mortgage with my credit card, maxed out all my credit cards, stopped paying my mortgage. I don't recommend doing that, but
Were
that's where
you
we got.
hiding it at the time?
I was not. I wouldn't say I was hiding it. We were not really talking about it. Um, I wasn't hiding it. We talked about it a little bit, but not until it was like at that point. It was like, okay, hon, we need to do something. This is a problem.
Yeah.
And my wife was very gracious, and I ended up changing careers and then making some more money. So we were able to start paying off our debt, and we worked our way out to pay off all of our debt over a couple of years, and then paid cash for our 15 passenger van. I literally walked into the car dealership with a briefcase with $20,000 cash in it and put it down on the counter at the
Amazing.
car dealership. I took my three oldest daughters. I'm like, girls, I want you to know how much it costs to buy a vehicle. So I went to TD Bank and I asked if I could get $20,000 in fives, and they just laughed at me. They're like, "No, we don't have $20,000 in fives. You would have to order that." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll accept 20." So my briefcase wasn't as full as I had hoped it would be, but it was still full. And anyways, we worked hard, even to the point, there was points where my wife was denied her credit card or her debit card at Zaire's, right in Barrie there. And how humiliating is that? Well, for her, but for me as a husband, my wife was standing there with a bunch of kids and can't buy the groceries, and it was very hard. And my own lack of sales, lack of sales skills, I guess is what it was. But worked hard, even to the point where my wife said she would go grocery shopping with the kids and want to go get a tea for like $1.50 at Tim Hortons. She's like, "No, I can't buy a tea right now. We're working hard to pay off all of this debt, and so I'm not going to buy this tea." And we just worked slowly and slowly over a number of years and dug ourselves out of, I think it was like $25,000 of debt or something like that, and paid it all off.
Good
So
job.
so yeah.
Yeah. So you ran the ship aground a little bit, learned your
A
lesson.
lot. We crashed it. We were like treading water in the ocean. That would be more accurate.
In our day and age, like even right now, though, many families are living that way right now, right?
Yeah.
Just a day at a time.
Yeah.
And so now, are you full time doing your this new Victory Tour book sales and whatnot?
The victory tour. No, I'm not. This is a side hustle.
Yeah.
I've actually told some people, if you want to spend a lot of money, then write a book and order books. That's a good way to spend a lot of money.
Yeah,
So,
I've been down that road, but I
have
keep
you
on
written a
right.
book?
Yeah, a couple actually.
Okay.
Yeah, one my first one in my 20s, to do with technical recycling called Recycology. And then I wrote one about 10 years ago. It's on Amazon. It's called Myopia. It's a gory science fiction book.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest it to anybody. But yeah, I'm writing another one. I'm writing two right now again. So we'll see what happens. Well, no, also I know what's happened. We'll put them out in the next year and off we go. But more recently, I've been sort of moving in a new direction. I've I did my whole business thing, and that kind of got me to a point where I was able to have a little bit of perspective on other things I may want to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Just because business wasn't consuming my every day, all day anymore. And so this is the direction I'm going, and it's similar to yours. You and I are both fighting to put Christian cultural values back in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the core reason why I reached out too, is because we're actually traveling in tandem now, where you and I are going in the same direction.
It's interesting. Have you ever heard of the book Roaring Lambs by Bob Briner?
I've heard of the title. I have not read the book.
So he was a big, it wasn't ESPN, but it was big U.S. sports television executive. And the point of his book is that Christians over a number of years were told not to get involved in politics, not to get involved in media, not to get involved. Were we explicitly told that? Like, don't do this? I don't think so, but I think there was a suggestion as you and I were growing up, and even our parents, not to get involved in some of this stuff. But we have, so his premise in the book is we need to be roaring lambs. We need to
Yeah.
be out there producing content that is good and gracious and life-giving
Yeah.
and full of beauty and art that is beautiful. And we need to be writing books. We need to be having YouTube channels. This was before YouTube that he wrote the book, but we need to be engaged in local politics and have our voice at the table. We don't live in our little cells and just sing kumbaya around the campfire. No,
Amen.
we need to be out there making culture and building culture and impacting culture with things that are good and true and right and pure and noble. And there are some people that are doing that really well. And so exactly what you just said, like we need to be getting that out there because it is good for culture to be having these things in it.
It's literally the reason we're doing this today. So like
Mm-hmm.
we've arrived, and well, we've arrived on the mission anyways. Now we have an
Yeah.
entire lifetime ahead of us.
Yeah.
And for me specifically, you've been on the mission now for a few years, putting yourself out there. It seems like I've seen a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of hum about your authorship and whatnot. How's that all going? How's the journey going as you step out of the boat?
Yeah, the journey is going. I'm learning a lot, even from my first book to my second book, tried to cut some costs, do it a little bit smarter so I can recoup a little bit faster with the second book. I was a speaker at the Winnipeg conference. I think I already mentioned it, but I was talking to the keynote speaker there. He's written 8 books. He said his best book has sold about 10,000 copies. And he said, if you want to sell books, you really need to get out and speak at events. That is a great way to sell books
Yeah.
because you're marketing your own book. And I talked to a distributor as well. And she said to me, she's like, if I carry your book on my shelf, she's like, this is the amount of marketing I am going to get you. And so, sorry, my phone. Yeah. So she said, well, I'm not going to market your book for you. If you want to market your book. So that is the lesson. And so I reached out, I called and emailed every Christian radio station in Canada. I reached out to podcasts and I'm like, hey, I've written a book. Can I come and talk about it? You got to do a lot of grunt work. It's not like you write a book and put it out there on Amazon and then the orders start flooding in. So,
Yeah, so you
so
grind
I'm
out
learning
your
a
own
lot.
marketing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you get a best-selling book and I'm learning about, I probably could have been more strategic in book launching and all that because there are guys that are doing it well. And so I'm learning as I'm going along. I'm happy to keep learning and growing. And yeah, so it's going good. It's a side hustle. Like I said, I have a real job as well. And so I do my real job and try to do as much of this as I can fit in on the side.
Where would you see this? Where would you love to see your side hustle go?
Yeah, I would love to be doing more speaking. I'm working on some coaching projects to help men really be intentional in their marriages and in their families. So I'd love to be doing more speaking, more coaching, more content producing. I'm kind of doing stuff from home right now, and I'd like to kind of amp up the video production of some of the stuff that I'm putting out there. Trying to get some more. I've been doing a lot of stuff in Canada right now, trying to get a little more stuff down into the U.S. There's a
Yeah.
huge market in the U.S., 10 times as big as Canada, so that's always a great place to do. And I've got some contacts there that I'm trying to just keep working and keep building and keep encouraging husbands and fathers.
Now, like you have a definite like you have a pointed message of positivity that supports nuclear family and definitely like Christian culture. You're fighting in a certain direction, which means you're also pushing against something. How would you define what you're pushing against?
All right. Well, I'll tell you a story. So my fiction book here, Danger in the Jungle, I was approached by this is small town Saskatchewan here, pretty conservative area. Some may say the most conservative area in Canada. I was approached by a local library to come and do an author reading at the library. And she reached out to some of the local schools, Catholic schools and public schools. And she said, I've got 3 schools interested in having you come and speak about your book there. Do you want to do that instead of doing the library event? I said, absolutely. The more, the merrier. So we started lining up these events. We had it booked on the calendar. And she calls me about a week before. She says, hey, I got bad news for you. Some of the school administrators went on your website and they want to cancel you from coming to speak about your book. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I wasn't totally surprised, but I'm like, okay, I'd love to hear what was offensive. What did they find that would keep them from having me come? My website is like my blog of funny stories that happened to me and my family and my books. It's not a theological powerhouse of Jesus Christ and Christianity by any means. So I'm like, what did they find that was offensive here? And the things they found offensive, I have a line on there that says I'm the dad of 10 kids and husband of 1 wife. That came up. They're like, they didn't really like the 1 wife thing. I was like, did they not get that? There was a little bit of a joke in there. She's like, I don't know. They said they didn't like the 1 wife thing. I also said I've been married to my first wife for 20 years. They didn't like that phrase. I don't know if that's offensive to someone. And then I have a line to answer your question that says, we live in a culture that wants to destroy our families, that wants to separate our families, and we need to love our wives and serve our families. That is the line. And they didn't like it that I said culture is out to destroy our families. So they did not want me to come and speak at their schools because of those highly offensive terms.
I actually want to mine into that statement with you a bit. Who do you think is the culture?
That's a great question. So ultimately, we have an enemy that is out there influencing the culture spiritually. To refer to the devil, I would say big picture is that. So how does he work? I think he works through people. And so we have people in culture pushing narratives, politicians, media personalities, pop culture. You want to use music. So many, we can talk about the sexualization of music and the lie that, sexual promiscuity is going to just make you love life and you're going to be an awesome person. And, I don't know many 65-year-old single men that don't have families that slept around for their whole lives that are just, living the dream. And so I think this promiscuous culture is selling us the lie. Okay, so here's another. Does that answer your question a little bit? I got another story to go along with that.
Definitely in the direction of it. Yeah.
So one of my talks is titled Parents and Pornography. And I wanted to do some local advertising about my parents and pornography talk. So I bought ads at the theater. I had slides running before movies at the local theater, said parents and pornography, talking to our kids about these subjects, something like that. I ran an ad in the local newspaper. And then I called the local radio station, said, hey, I'd like to run an ad on the air for my talk, Parents and Pornography. So she said, I have to look into that. I don't know if we can run that. Let me get back to you. So she gets back to me. She says, no, we can't run your ad because we can't say the word pornography on the air. And I thought, oh, this is ironic. This is like a top 40 station. Like, okay, so you can't say the word pornography on the air. I said, what if I said, okay, that's fine. Let me get back to you. So I went on and looked up the last songs they'd played on their radio station in the last 24 hours. And I looked up the lyrics to those songs. Yeah. And I put them in a Word document, the most offensive lyrics of those songs. And I called her back. I said, hey, are you sitting at your computer now? I just want to send you something. And she said, yeah. I said, okay. I'm going to send you a list of songs you've played on your station in the last day or two. Do you agree those are songs you've played on your station? She said, yeah, we've played those songs. And I said, would you like to just look through those lyrics? What do you think about? I don't remember if I asked her to read them out loud to me or not. I should have asked that. I might have asked that. I don't remember exactly. I'm like, look at those lyrics. What do you think of that? She's like, well, I said, you're already playing pornography on your station through your music, even if you don't use the word pornography. She said, well, it's different. It's music. I said, I don't really understand. Help me understand. How is that different? Well, it's music. I said, yeah, no, I don't understand how that's
There's
different.
The juxtaposition of the principle, because you're literally you're trying to market anti-pornography on a medium that is openly distributing it, right?
Yeah. So I just kept saying, I don't understand. I don't understand how it's different. We went in circles. We never got anywhere.
No.
They didn't run my ads, but I think I made my point, and we're still friends. I actually did an interview with them for my book the other day, so I didn't burn any bridges, and I tried to do it, in good nature. But I think the point was there. Like, they don't want the good, true, pure, noble, right stuff.
No, but let's call it what it is. Like you and I represent a small fraction of the demographic that has actually turned 180, is willing to face pornography and discuss what it is, and hopefully even be hopefully the only actually not hopefully the only way you can get here is to be honest about the impact that it's had on you personally.
Mm-hmm.
And so how many men are willing to get on a podcast right now and talk about their personal pornography usage?
Mm-hmm.
There's not many.
Mm-hmm.
And the only men and women who are going to be willing to be interested in your ad in the movie theater are the ones that come around this bend. So you are marketing to a very small demographic. So I can see their perspective, but at the same time, you're it needs to be discussed, but it first needs to be discussed amongst the fathers, right? And
Yeah,
so
totally.
our job then as us both Christian men is to go around the world, and not even speaking says they'll know us by our love, is to
Mm-hmm.
be open and build relationships with all these different men to the point where they of their own accord come and speak to us openly about their porn or whatever usage, right?
Yeah, and I think
Hard
being
road.
transparent of our own stories and what
Yeah.
we've gone through is all part of that. Like, we are just normal guys, just like you guys. We're not
Yeah.
normal families, normal and imperfect people. That's what we are, and we don't have to pretend like we've got it all together. Because maybe you do,
Oh,
Rudy,
heck
but I
no.
sure don't.
Yeah, no, I make all of my headway through that authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking about my different struggles, and unfortunately, I have like an alphabetical list of them. So, well, brother, I know you got to be out of here at about the 2 o'clock mark. So maybe we'll, if there's closing statements, and wrap it up just in the interest of staying on time.
Yeah, I would just, you know, what really sometimes we feel like we don't have what it takes as dads. Like, I'm not prepared to talk to my kids about this. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a psychologist, like you said. I'm not a pastor. I can't deal with this. Well, I just want to encourage you as parents. You can do it. You can feel the fear of having these conversations and do it anyways. That's what courage is. Feel the fear and do it anyways. Because I believe God has given you your children. He didn't give them to anyone else. Literally, you and your wife are the people that made your children. And you've got what it takes to give them what they need. And I know we've got adoption and fostering and things like that. But I truly believe God has given you what you need to talk to your kids about this stuff, to raise your kids, to love your wife, to love your children. Even if you don't feel equipped, prepared, empowered, jump in and give it a shot. You've got what it takes.
That's a beautiful place to close it off. Jason, thank you very much for your time today. I would like to, when you get your next book out or your next thing or whatever, let's do this again with an unconstrained time, and we'll talk more about pornography on the public sphere.
Great. Love it. Thanks so much, Rudy.
All the best. Thank you, and we'll talk later.
See ya.
Cheers.